Hey guys, Scott here, and today I want to talk about breakable walls a bit, because it looks like with the new changes to Macmillan, they're going to keep adding them. This is a thing we're going to have to deal with, so let's actually work on making them better, at least in my opinion. I think most breakable walls in the game are not good. I think they're kind of bad design, and they are an excuse for bad design, and I think that's part of a huge problem. But there are a couple of examples of good breakable walls, so I do think it's possible to do it correctly. I just think they're not really doing that for the most part. An example of a good breakable wall is typically one that prevents an infinite, not grants an infinite. So, for example, bad in preschool, it's not an infinite, but you know the loop when you run out of the school, you go over the fence, you go back in that side, then you just keep running around that over and over again. Extremely stupidly strong loop for survivors. They nerfed it a bit. Actually now on the PTB they just completely removed it, which I think was unnecessary, but that's an example of an extremely strong loop. And I think now that they added a breakable wall to the school, they made it so that loop is not really freely runnable anymore. A killer or a survivor can't just go through that doorway anymore, so it actually benefits the killer a bit. And the reason I'm saying I think breakable walls need to benefit the killer is because of just time efficiency. It's very easy to look at things just, in a 1v1 scenario, but you can't really do that. Because you have to think about it like this. Every second of the killer's time is basically 4 seconds of survivor time. For example, if somebody decisive strikes you and then runs away for 20 seconds, they're not gaining 20 seconds of game progress on you. They're gaining 60 seconds of game progress on you because you're only dealing with one guy and there's 3 other survivors doing stuff for that 20 seconds. So you can't look at it like that. That, even if you only get 15 seconds out of DS, that's still 45 seconds of the killer's time that is not basically dedicated to stopping the game from progressing. So you have to look at it like that. You have to, the ratios are not the same. So inherently, things like this should benefit the killer because the time it takes for a killer to break a breakable wall is essentially 4 times as much as it takes a survivor to deal with something like that. So inherently, it should benefit killers because it just simply, their seconds are more valuable. So putting really bad map design with near infinites and then saying, oh, but you can break the breakable wall to make it not an infinite anymore, is just stupid, in my opinion. That's just really, really bad design because that just inherently benefits survivors right from the get-go. Now, I think the way to fix this is keep the breakable wall concept in, but just reverse it. Make it so instead of killers having to break these walls, survivors have to build these walls up. And this is so good for a number of reasons. One of them is that it gives survivors something else to do. It adds a whole new layer of strategy to the game. And obviously, they can still only be built up once. So there would basically be planks of wood and like a crowbar at where the current breakable walls are right now. And then, a 5 or 6, 10-second animation or whatever, the survivor can ting, 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 set up these planks that basically act as a breakable wall as they currently exist. Because most of them benefit survivor. So that's okay, we can keep those walls. And then the walls that benefit killer, we can keep as just regular breakable walls. So we can actually balance these things by having survivors have to build these strong ones for survivors and killers having to, leave the strong ones up, which can be a detriment too, because if, there's someone on the other side of that preschool wall, well, unless you want to walk around the entire school to get to them, you have to kick that wall. So I think you can do both. And the buildable wall concept is really, really good because, it gives survivors something else to do. And like I said, there's a whole new layer of strategy. People will think about, okay, I can't just immediately start doing gens right now. Well, I mean, you can. That's still probably going to be the most efficient way to win. That'll always be the most efficient way to win, is just do gens and nothing else. But with this, you can have a little bit of strategy, and instead of just immediately going to a gen, you can say, all right, I'm going to go build that wall on the Ironworks of Misery, so we have the old God window back. Now, that survivor is dedicating time, not doing generators, so even if it gains them 20 seconds later down the line and keeps somebody alive, it still takes the survivor, 5-10 seconds to do it and 5-10 seconds to get there. So it ends up being like an even trade of time, but because killer's time is way more valuable, it ends up still eventually benefiting the survivors. And with a suggestion like this, you can do a lot of other things. You can start adding perks once all the maps have breakable walls, because it seems like that's the way they want to go. Every new map, they keep adding breakable walls. So it seems like that's the way they want to go. Eventually, when all the maps are remade or have changes, they'll all have breakable walls. So eventually we can have perks that affect breakable walls. You can build them faster. They take longer to break or something like that. A killer's, blinded momentarily when you break them. Just shit like that. You can have a new item that acts as like a toolbox, but for breakable walls. or buildable walls rather, so you can have them built up faster over time. You can have new add-ons for that. And, you know, most importantly, it's a new objective for survivors. It, you know, the game delay and the game speed is also dependent on how fast the killer is downing people. Because you can do gens as fast as humanly possible, but if the killer is downing people in 15 seconds, you're still going to lose. So dedicating some smart time to building the correct walls and the right amount of time for the one used to extend a chase for a decent amount is a lot. Because, you know, it seems like, oh, okay, if I dedicate 15 seconds to building this wall, it doesn't seem worth it. But I don't think I need to tell you how detrimental a decisive strike can be to a killer. And that's just, you know, one example of like a 15-second time gain. If you have multiple breakable walls like that and the killer has to break all of them, it can be extremely good for the survivors too. So overall, I think that's the correct way to do it. The already killer-sided breakable walls we leave as breakable walls, so it's up to the killer to have to break them if the situation arises. And the extremely survivor-sided walls, we have to make them build the walls, so they have to spend a decent amount of time. Overall, it's still less time than it takes the killer to go to a wall and break it, because there's just simply more survivors and their seconds are just, you know, they just have more overall seconds between them. So I think that's the way it should go. Make the survivor-sided walls buildable, make the killer-sided walls stay the same, and I think that would make the game a lot more interesting. It would remove the whole stigma of, well, they just create infinites but slap an breakable wall there and go, well, you can break it, so it's not really an infinite. That's not good design. So I think that's the way that they should take it. I think that'd be a really good idea. I don't think it would be that monumentally hard either. It would require new animations and new probably sound assets for hitting, but they've done a lot more in a, you know, shorter amount of time. So I don't think it's unreasonable to ask. You know, I have a lot of suggestions for this game, but I don't even bother because, you know, it's things like that are just never going to be added. It's unreasonable. But I think like this one is actually kind of reasonable, and I would love to see something like that in the game. But that is it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. I appreciate it. And I'm going to immediately... I remembered. Every time, man, I remembered. All right. I do appreciate you guys watching. I'm sorry about the lack of videos. It's just been rough health-wise, so streams have not been too consistent, and I've not been having really any streams. But Farabee, Silver, and X, thank you guys. Appreciate you being dumb. All right, bye, guys.